So how do you go to being a consultant for RIF to becoming the PD? Talk about that transition. How did that come to pass?
Well, let's see how to say this diplomatically. I felt after 2 years of being a full-time audience researcher and flying in and out of markets and radio stations that I didn't know enough about the day-to-day operations of a radio station. I mean, here we were armed with this great research, but I didn't have that visceral, emotional connection to what it's like when the rating book comes out and what it's like to go to an event and interact with the audience. I mean, that was just stuff that I observed as a fan, not as an employee of a station. So I knew I had to go to work for a radio company or a radio station at some point. And when I delivered the research to RIF, both Bender and Jay Hoker, our general manager, called me and said, hey, you know, this was a great project. It was an eye-opener. We learned a lot. We'd like to bring you in and actually do this stuff on a regular basis for us. And that's all I needed to hear. I mean, it was an opportunity to come back to Detroit from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which sounds as bad as it or is as bad as it sounds, and certainly was back in the 70s. It was not a fun place to live for a city boy. And so I grabbed at the opportunity, moved back to Detroit, and really had a great time at RIF. I mean, Bender pretty much let me do what I needed to do as long as I was getting my research stuff done. But I got to move around from department to department. I actually carried a list at one point and sold time, which was very instructive. I realized I wasn't good at it and I didn't enjoy it, but to do it for a year was highly instructive and gave me a degree of empathy for the
So you got to just go through the station and learn every job, it sounds like.
To a great degree, I got to wander around and do all that stuff. And
so what year was this? I'm sorry to cut you off, but what year was this and who was on the air?
78, 79. And Bender let me shadow him to a great degree. I mean, I was a fixture in his office. And so, you know, there would be this litany of people that would, you know, walk in and ask him questions. You know, some good ones, some stupid ones, some philosophical ones. And I got to watch this brilliant guy program his radio station. And, you know, a new album would come in, you know, from Bob Seger. And, you know, how are you going to program this thing, Tom? Are we just going to track the thing all the way through? Are we going to play some selected tracks for a week and see what sticks to the wall? You know, all that stuff. I got to actually sort of shadow box with Tom, and it was really helpful. I mean, when I actually became program director a few years later, even though I only knew the tip of the iceberg of programming, having had the opportunity to see the radio station through Tom Bender's eyes was critically important in my learning process. A, because he was really good, and B, because it was an opportunity for me to be able to kind of get the feel of it without having to make any mistakes. And I made my mistakes later, but yeah, during those years it was all learning and it was great.